Welcome to the Grounded Pwn Podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined as always by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. After talking so heavily on MMA last week, we are going to kick things off on the gaming side of the coin this week. But don't worry, because we will definitely be sure to recount the action-packed UFC Vegas 59 card and also look ahead to next week's fight night, some PFL, some Bellator, maybe even talk a little Contender Series. But first off, Scott, how are you doing this week?
You know, I'm good, but what's really been on my mind in terms of the gaming, because obviously I think we're going to go into that first, is so I have just got, as you know, and I don't know if I've mentioned on the show, I got a new gaming laptop. Now, it's more of the budget region of gaming laptop. It's an Acer. I paid like $720 before tax on that. And so mostly I got it for, being able to video edit or audio edit and that kind of thing. In fact, in working on this show, it makes my life a lot easier just having a nice, more up-to-date, not 8-year-old laptop.
Oh, of course. It's a huge difference.
It's a distinct difference. But I figured, okay, if I'm going to be doing some multimedia work, I'd rather get something that's going to at least have some juice if I'm working with video and that kind of thing. So I said, okay, What are we looking for? I ended up getting a gaming laptop. And again, it's a budget range, but it's still, it should do what I need to do. I'm not really going crazy. But again, it is a gaming laptop. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I could play some games on here. I'm not really much of a PC gamer, especially anymore. I think I used to play, things like The Sims and, SimCity and these kind of things. I was never really a big PC gamer. My favorite PC game of all time, though, is probably Mafia.
That's right. Yeah, you have mentioned that.
It got ported to the other consoles, but it was on PC first. And I always really liked that one. So that was probably the last time I was really playing let's say a non like Sims or 4X or anything like that kind of title, dude, on the PC.
Like, The Sims was so much fun. Like I just lost hours upon hours. I mean, I took Sims 2 in the draft that we did a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And I stand by that. Like, that was just one of the games that just absorbed my life for like weeks on end. But like, having a gaming PC, I've noticed, is like something, again, I'm majorly a console gamer as well, but like having a gaming PC, every once in a while something will pop up and you really want to just play that game, because like, there's some games that just don't make it over to consoles, or they're better played on a PC, like simulation games, like you mentioned The Sims. I have The Sims 4 on Xbox One.
I have it on PS4.
It's not as fun as using a mouse and keyboard, because it's just like something about the simulation genre is just so much easier to navigate with mouse and keyboard. And one of those games, before we launch into your main question here, is actually one I would recommend to you now that you have, before we jump into the discussion of where I think you're leading this conversation, where should you get Game Pass for your PC?
That is where I'm thinking here. Yes, that's what I was building up to.
But there's a game I'd recommend outside of Game Pass that just came out on Friday. You may mention, or may remember that last week I mentioned I was playing a review game that I couldn't talk about.
That's right.
This game is called Recipe for Disaster, and I checked it out on a whim. It is a restaurant management simulator.
Okay. My first thought was it's something in the Overcooked kind of region, but I guess not.
It's, I would almost say, think The Sims, but instead of managing every aspect of everybody's lives, you are just running a restaurant. So like, you hire waiters, you hire like cooks, like you basically hire all these employees with the set of skills that you want. You build your restaurant, you design it, you set all the prices, you can customize the menu all the way down to making your own recipes. And like, you manage like the stock, you place all the appliances, all the dining room tables, the bathrooms, you set who cleans where, who mans what station. So like, all right, well, this person's really good at like prep work, so we're going to put them on the countertop, and then also they can help out with the grill if they get too busy. So like, it's really involved simulation that I recommend definitely taking the tutorial, but it just came out of early access, so it's a 1.0 release now on Friday of last week. So,
and that's part of Game Pass?
No, it is not. That's what I'm saying. Before we jump into the Game Pass discussion, I did want to recommend that to you, knowing that you like The Sims.
Okay, that's interesting to know. But yes, so yeah, you kind of spoiled it for me, but yes, I am thinking about getting Xbox Game Pass for my gaming PC, because I've never owned an Xbox. I still don't intend to, especially after spending as much money as I did on a gaming laptop.
Mm-hmm.
I do not intend on buying another console anytime soon. So if I'm going to play an Xbox game, it will be through this PC. And I'm just debating. First off, I don't think I'm going to do it like tomorrow, but I think I'm pretty close to getting to the point where I might actually do it, because I'm starting to get, making some headway in Deathloop, which is the game I've still been playing. I'm kind of spoiling that too, as far as what I've been playing. I mean, not that that's a surprise. I've still been playing that game, but I am really starting to think more about getting Game Passing, like giving it a try. I know you get like X amount of trials and that kind of thing, trial time and all that. So I'm weighing when to start that if I do. So I guess the questions that I have are, well, let's start with kind of a logistical question here, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have an Xbox controller. I don't have any controllers that are specifically meant for playing, games on a PC. I'm not really a good WASD guy. Not that that's really what you'd probably be playing for Game Pass, right? I imagine.
No, you would.
You could? Okay. All right. No, I've never been very good with WASD. I can't really do the keyboard thing too very well. So I've always, even when I was playing Mafia way back, I was like, well, I'm going to buy a controller.
But I'm right there with you.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I feel like it's a hard thing. If you don't get it, you just can't get it. But like some people are, and when you get it, I feel like it's much easier.
So you're asking what controller should you get?
That is the short form of what I've been saying. Yeah, what controller should I get if I'm going to play through my PC?
I will always say that the Xbox controller is the best one for PC gaming, because it's designed to also be plug and play with Windows 10, which is, I'm assuming, the operating system you're going to have.
It's actually Windows 11, but yes.
Oh, okay. But I believe DualShock 4 is also plug and play with a Windows PC at this point, a Windows 10 or Windows 11.
Okay.
So if you have a USB cable, just plug it into your laptop and see if it works. And I think that with the right drivers, even a PS5 DualSense controller can work on a PC.
See, I'd be perfectly fine just using my PS4 ones, actually, because I'm not really using my PS4 as much as I used to anymore, especially as I'm finding more of my games I can just play on my PS5.
Honestly,
mostly I keep it around because there's some games that when you're trying to play with someone, across generations, you can't play online very easily. So I keep the other console is like, okay, this is how I can play with some of the guys who still haven't gotten to PS5 yet.
Yeah, so honestly, I think the only reason that I have this Xbox controller over here instead of like a PS controller, because I honestly think that the PlayStation was lagging behind the Xbox in terms of controllers all the way up until PS4. When the PS4 DualShock came out, it was like, okay, this is almost on par with the Xbox. And now with the DualSense, I think it's just a matter of preference. I don't think it's like, all right, well, this one's clearly better. But anyway, the reason I have this is because I have the Xbox Elite controller. So I have my Xbox Series S controller on my PC because there's very rare scenarios where I will not be using my Xbox Elite 2 controller for Xbox. So that way I can just keep my Xbox Series S controller over by my PC. So it's the same type of situation. You're not really using your PS4 controller because you're playing on PS5 99.9% of the time. So it makes sense that you would just have these extra PS4 controllers laying around. So I would recommend that. And if you don't like the way that feels, or like some reason like the setup is a little wonky, because I've never actually used a PS4 controller for gaming aside from this demo that they said, oh, well, we haven't mapped the Xbox controllers yet, so use a PS4 controller. I didn't use it for Steam or Game Pass or anything, so I don't know if there's any kind of weird like button mapping or anything with that. But I think that you'd be fine. I think I say give that a shot, and if not, maybe then look into getting like a cheap like Xbox One controller. You don't need an Xbox Series S controller. Just like go to your local game store or your Target or your Walmart or something, and then be like, all right, well, I can probably get like a pretty cheap Xbox One controller, and that should work just as fine as anything.
That's good to know. Yeah, absolutely. First off, I wouldn't have even thought about trying my PS5. I thought about PS5, I guess, and I don't know why I couldn't have thought of PS4 also. But just to hear that, yeah, actually, that is not just a viable option, but an extremely good plug and play option where I don't have to worry about drivers and downloading that kind of thing. Right? That is nice to hear. So yeah, I'm actually really encouraged to hear that. So now, obviously, with the controller situation, at least now figured out. Now I think I can know where I'm going to go with that. Now it's up to what kind of games are on there that I'm really like that I should be checking out, because I've really not played an Xbox like exclusive game it's almost definitely more than a decade.
Well, here's the good news for you.
Okay.
With ever since it's probably been 5 or 6 years now, all Xbox first party games also appear on PC. So if you wanted to play Halo Infinite, you can get that on Xbox Game or a PC Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to play, I believe Gears is on here as well. If you want to get caught up on the Gears of War franchise, not only is Gears of War Ultimate on here, which is the remake of Gears 1, but also Gears 4, Gears 5, all those games. I don't think Gears 2 and 3 are on PC yet.
I will say I've never been a big fan or that interested in Gears of War. I played it like little bits here and there over the years. So that was a franchise I kind of was not that interested in. But I will say, you mentioned Halo. I was considering the Master Chief Collection, which I think is part of this, obviously, right?
So I'm looking at the Halo Collection on here. Listen to all the Halo games you have access to. Okay. Halo, the Master Chief Collection, which is Halo 1, 2, 3, Reach, and ODST. 5 games, complete with their multiplayer and single player. Then you also have Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, which is Halo 1, and Halo Reach Standalone on here. Then you have Halo Wars 2, Halo Spartan Assault, and Halo Spartan Strike, which are 2 mobile games that they ported to PC. And then you have the Halo Infinite multiplayer and the Halo Infinite campaign. So you have so much Halo content. Also, all the individual Halos are, if you don't want to download the whole Master Chief Collection, you can also download Halo 1, 2, 3, 4, Reach, and ODST individually.
Okay, yeah, because what I'm thinking is I don't care about multiplayer. If I'm going to play multiplayer, I'd probably just go to a buddy's house and play split screen at this point. And I don't even know anybody who has an Xbox anymore in my life, in my main circle, right? That I would go to their house, maybe who they live far away. But I'm really interested in kind of the campaigns because obviously we watched the show. We talked about the show in the spring,
God.
And I feel like
I blocked out the show of my memories. Like I feel like I repressed those memories.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't think it was the show was that bad, but I also don't have any attachment to the story or the characters. But I am interested. I've always been interested in the Halo, I guess lore, right? Because there is an ongoing story that people have been interested in. So I've even considered over the years, and I never actually went about doing it. I considered watching story only videos and that kind of thing on YouTube or people playing through the game and I'm just kind of observing it, that kind of thing. I never ended up doing it, but I mean, maybe I'll just go play the games and maybe play and the question I would ask too on that is, you named a lot of Halo games. I'm not going to play all of those Halo games. What are the ones that if I care most about the story that I really want to focus on? What would you say?
So here's the funny thing. It has all the Halo games except Halo 5, which is largely considered the worst Halo game. So you're not missing out too much there.
Okay. That's good.
And also it ends on a cliffhanger that, spoiler alert, when Halo Infinite is just not resolved. They just kind of, they're like, oh, nobody cared about this story. We're just going to, they paid lip service to it. Like, oh yeah, remember when this happened? And then they kind of moved on. And then they kind of hint at it throughout the rest of the story, but it's never oh yeah, we have to finish this story.
That is bizarre.
But I mean, it was also a good 7 years between games. So it's I think they were people don't care anymore.
Yeah, maybe.
They referenced it in passing on a couple of Halo Infinite moments. But yeah. So I would say, honestly, Halo 1, Reach is a really good story as well. It's a prequel story to the original
definitely
Halo.
The trilogy, I assume, right? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, and Reach would be
There's what I would focus on.
Reach is, again, it's a prequel. I don't know if you want to play it in chronological order or order of release.
I guess I would go with whatever people think is best to play it in.
I mean, it might be pretty tricky to go back and play Halo Combat Evolved, which is Halo 1.
Right.
Before or after you play any of the other games, because while that game was revolutionary in its time, it definitely has some things where oh yeah, this is a game from 2002 or whenever that game came out.
Yeah, I mean, I remember people were excited by Halo Combat Evolved, when I was coming home from summer camp. Summer camp was a long time ago. I'm sending my kids to summer camp now.
Yeah. But all in all, I mean, I would say that that would be the right call. If you want to play some games on your laptop, there is no better deal in gaming in general than Game Pass, and that's because I'm looking at the list right now. There are 444 games you get for the price of the subscription, and a lot of them are huge names. Like we just named off so many Halo games, a couple of Gears of War games. All of the Fallout games are on here because
nice.
Now they own Bethesda, so there's also the Doom games. There's probably the Elder Scrolls games. Let me see.
There was that newest Doom game too that I was looking to play. Is that on there? I forget. It's the
Doom Eternal. Yep, it's right there.
Oh no, that's right. I played that one. I'm thinking of a different game. I'm thinking of
Doom 64.
Actually, that's what I was thinking of. No, I wasn't thinking of Doom 64.
I mean, let's see. Let's take a look.
One I was actually here was a question because I
Wolfenstein.
Knew this was...
There are 4 Wolfenstein games. All of them are from the new series. So there's Wolfenstein: The New Order, which was like the first reboot that they did.
Youngblood, that's the one I'm.
Then it went Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, which was like a expansion to that. Then there was Wolfenstein 2. Then Wolfenstein: Youngblood was the follow up to Wolfenstein: New Colossus.
I played the other 3. I never did play Youngblood. I really like New Colossus, so that's why when I played New Colossus, I actually went back and played the other 2 that I had missed.
I will also tell you, the Yakuza series is on Game Pass as a whole. So you can start with 0, go to Kiwami, which is a remake of 1, go to Kiwami 2, then play 3, 4, 5, 6, and then Like a Dragon. Or just start with Like a Dragon, because Like a Dragon reboots the series with a new character and everything.
I'll tell you one thing that I was actually more interested in, because I'm thinking especially about games that I really don't have any access to on PlayStation, right?
Okay.
So one that had jumped out just because I remembered people talking about this a lot, Sunset Overdrive.
Ooh, is that on?
Have you played that one?
I played a little bit of it, but that's interesting because you're coming at it as a PlayStation fan who has a lot of love for Insomniac.
Right.
But you've never played that game.
That's
it sure is on Game Pass for PC.
Yeah, I see it there. So that's why when I realized that it was on there, I was like, oh man, I wonder if this is like worth, because people talk about it. I don't know if you had any good experience with it or not. To hopefully recommend or not recommend either way.
It's a lot of fun that you can definitely trace it back and be like, oh, this is like where they got some of their traversal chops for the new Ratchet and Clank, or where they got it for Spider-Man, because that predates Spider-Man. I think that was 2014 is when Sunset Overdrive came out, or maybe 2013.
Yeah, it was before Spider-Man. I remember that.
But yeah, that would be a super solid pick. Also, I know you're not like a horror guy or anything, but this isn't.
I'm not.
But State of Decay 2, I don't know if it's stabilized. But like when it first launched, it was a really fun game that had a lot of technical glitches. Okay. It's now been, I think, 4 years since it launched, and they've added just expansion pack after expansion pack. That entire version of that game is now on Game Pass, and I'm looking at it right now, and I'm almost itching to get back in because it has such a hooking gameplay loop that I would love to jump in back into that.
I have to point out something that is just hilarious to me, okay? As a PlayStation gamer. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
MLB The Show 22 is part of Game Pass on Xbox, but I cannot just get that through PlayStation. I'd have to buy it through PlayStation. That is so strange.
I think that's something that they did on purpose because they wanted to get it. MLB wanted to get it to as many people as possible, and they're like, well, we're introducing it to a whole new platform, so why not make it Game Pass compatible?
Sure, I mean it makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, the optics of the fact that it's much easier to just play MLB The Show on Xbox without buying the game than it is on PlayStation is it's stunning.
Super Mega Baseball.
I love Super Mega Baseball. I have that on PS3.
I know, but Super Mega Baseball 3 is on Game Pass for PC. I don't think it's on Game Pass for Xbox. I think you have to have PC for that.
Oh, is that right? Interesting.
So EA Play is, I think, only included with the PC version. I don't think that comes over to Xbox.
I see.
But I'm looking at some of these. I mean, there's a lot of indie games that I would definitely recommend. Like Tunic, for example, is not on PlayStation. I
didn't play one Nick though, dude.
We're doing
I'm stealing your joke. I'm stealing your joke.
But yeah, Tunic, if you like old school Zelda, that is a game you should check out, and you will be able to play it before it comes to PlayStation next month.
Actually, one thing I really wanted to ask you about, because I know this is up your alley, right?
Mm-hmm.
You love the Forza Horizon series. You talk about this a lot. There's 4 and 5. Is there any distinct difference between 4 and 5 that I maybe would prefer to play one over the other, or...
4 takes place in England, 5 takes place in Mexico, and they're both very, very fun. I think that it comes down to preference in terms of like which one you are about, but like I preferred 5, but 4 is also very, very good. I think 5 also has more like event types. Like they just kind of expanded out the event types.
Sure.
You also have the entire Mass Effect series at your disposal.
I already have all of those games on PS4 or 5.
The Legendary Edition, or just the original? I have the
Legendary Edition. I actually have the old ones still too. I had them on my PS3 because I still have 3, 4, and 5. Down two of them are in my basement. One's upstairs at my main TV. Now, but once I got the Legendary Collection, I deleted the other older versions off of there.
Now, tell me, have you played the Ori games?
No. That's an exclusive too, correct?
Well, I think it came. I know they came to Switch. I don't know if they ever came to PlayStation. I don't think they did.
No, I don't think they did.
But dude, you got to play the Ori game. So Ori and the Blind Forest is the first one. The definitive edition is on Game Pass, and then Ori and the Will of the Wisps is the sequel.
What type of game is this? What are we talking about?
It's like a 2D action platformer, kind of like Metroidvania style. Yeah, it's one of the most beautiful games you'll ever play, and also it's kind of a touching story with not a whole lot of dialogue, and
I'm down with those.
Really great action.
Type of games.
And then if you're looking for like a PC specific game, like there's Age of Empires 4, Crusader Kings 3, which Crusader Kings 3, what I've heard is, like, I haven't played that, but like people who play it are obsessed with it, and I've
heard a little bit about this.
It's basically like Game of Thrones simulator is what I've basically been told it is.
Interesting. That one's nice to know about too. Yeah, and then I'm definitely happy that it has that rare replay collection on there, because I do have a lot of affection for those type of games, like Perfect Dark and Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, these type of things.
Yes.
So I'm interested in the...
Let me give you 2 more here before we wrap up on this.
Yeah. We don't have to make the whole show out about this, but I was very interested
talking about
in this. Hopefully it was a good jump-off point.
So XO1 is an extremely beautiful, like, indie game where you're piloting an alien craft, and that's it. You're just flying through these gorgeous worlds and exploring and trying to get to the end. It's not a very long game, but I remember playing it for preview, and it was astoundingly gorgeous, and like, it's just a simple game where you're just piloting an alien craft through these worlds. Mm-hmm. There's no combat. You're just flying through these worlds at really high speeds. And it's just absolutely beautiful. And then, I don't know if you like games like XCOM.
I actually have XCOM 2 on PS4. I just haven't played it yet. My buddy's trying to talk me into it, actually.
Well, there's a game here called Empire of Sin. It is a strategy game that is all about the 1920s Prohibition era Chicago, but it's like the criminal underworld. So you said you like Mafia, so I figured maybe this would be kind of up your alley. It's like a strategy game involving organized crime.
That is interesting, actually. I didn't, because I'd heard of that game, but I didn't know what it was, and I was like, I don't know, is this any good? But yeah, to hear that, not only that you're kind of talking about it, like maybe to play it, now, okay, I'm going to move that up my list a little bit. I'll give you real quick again before we kind of go out here. I will say, just on that genre note, I was able to bond the other day with my son's little friend, because he is all about Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which is the same type of gameplay. And I was telling him, I think I blew his mind a little bit. I'm like, I beat that game. He's like, you did? So he's like, he was so excited to show me where he was, and he went and got his little Switch, and like my sons are both playing in the pool, and he's like, I want to go show you. So like I'm hanging out with like my son's friend. It was funny.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm so excited for that second one. Comes out.
I'm definitely interested. Is that this year?
I think next month or maybe October at the latest.
Oh, okay, it is this year. Interesting. Okay,
Sparks of Hope.
That's on my radar. Sure, that's another game that's on my radar for this year.
I know kids love the Rabbids. But I wish that was just a Mario strategies game. Like, it's like I think I've said this before. Maybe I said it on my other podcast. But like, Marvel versus Capcom, I always just wish it was a Marvel fighting game. I don't care about the Capcom characters. Like, maybe leave the Street Fighter characters in there. But
I get what you're saying.
I would rather just have all right, I have a huge cast of Marvel fighting game characters. That would be so much more appealing to me. That's the same thing for Mario and Rabbids. Like, yeah, whatever. Like, there's some Rabbids in there, but like, unless there's like a very good gameplay reason for why I should have one of the Rabbids in my party, like I almost always just do exclusively Mario characters because I just want a Mario strategy game. I don't care about the Rabbids.
I get you. And then the last thing I want to just rank these real quick. We don't have to go deep conversation here because we've got other things we want to talk about. Rank these 3 games.
Oh,
Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout New Vegas.
Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4.
1, 2, 3.
Yep.
I think that's probably how I would put them as well.
I know a lot of people say Fallout New Vegas is the better game, and I
can't tell anyone they're wrong.
It very well may be. I just have so much nostalgia for 3 that I can't put it above it. Like that's forever going to be my favorite Fallout game, I think. But Fallout 4, I know a lot of people give it crap. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's just it wasn't the leap forward that people wanted with that game when it was like, oh, we're coming to new gen consoles, and it's like, oh, this just looks like a slightly better looking Fallout 3, but in Boston.
But you know what? That's kind of all I wanted out of it. So, I was actually extremely happy with that game. You're right. I don't understand the bad rap that it gets, other than people being like, "Oh, we expected more evolution or something like that." Okay, fine, whatever. I had a lot of fun. I had a great time. It is what it is. But yeah, so we've got some gaming topics for this show as well, Mister. So what's kind of going on?
So real quick, just this morning, right before we jumped on this recording. Street Fighter 6, or I guess last night, Street Fighter 6, because it was during EVO, which is the big fighting game tournament that was happening out in Las Vegas this week. They announced 2 new characters. So we had Juri, who I believe she made her debut in Ultra Street. No,
she was in Street Fighter 4. She was in one of the Street Fighter 4.
No, she first appeared in Super Street Fighter 4.
Yes,
and then she is joined by Kimberly, who is a new character. And
she's a ninja, I believe.
She's a ninja, all right.
So we don't have enough.
Apparently has
ninjas,
some sort of,
which is okay. I'm okay with that.
Apparently has some sort of link to graffiti, which plays into this game's theme. I'm all just seeing this information for the first time right now while we're doing this. But yeah, like the game's theme has like a very graffiti heavy style and like kind of street art style. So
it does.
She definitely plays into that with her style. And like I'm looking at one of her attacks, and it looks like it sprays paint like kind of across the entire screen when she attacks.
Okay.
Which is really, really stylish looking. But yeah, like I played Street Fighter 6. It was so much fun.
Yeah,
I think
that's nice to hear.
It's the right evolution for the genre as a whole by adding commentary. Like you think commentary, you think like sports games.
Sure.
But they did such a smart thing, including commentary from well-known like fighting game esports commentators, and you can choose, all right, I want this guy to be play-by-play, this guy to be color commentary, and they actually will play off of each other and be contextual with like what's going on the screen. And like it's really, really smart, and you can disable it if you don't want it. And it's like it's such a really like intelligent evolution of the genre, because you're like, all right, how are they going to possibly make this 1v1 fighting like any different than it's been with Street Fighter 5 or Street Fighter 4? And it's like, oh, well, they have a couple new moves and like different ways to do it, but also there's an easier mode of like, all right, the button inputs are a little bit simpler, so you don't have to like memorize a billion combos and everything.
That'll probably help me, but I'm sure my friend will, my buddy who's a big Street Fighter guy will probably be like, "This is stupid."
But it's also not so dumbed down that it's like just like press this button to win.
Right.
It just kind of helps you along the way, and then also adding the commentary. It's just. It feels like this is the next evolution of the fighting game genre, and I'm really excited to get my hands on it more. I only played like 3 matches when I did get my hands on it back in June, but like, yeah, I was blown away by it. I was like, all right, yeah, Street Fighter 6, this is going to be cool. And then I was like, oh, wow, that was something.
And it's so funny because all you're talking about is it's just different audio overlay. Like you're not talking about dramatic changes to the game itself, but you're still describing this as sort of like a revolutionary change. That is interesting.
But think about when sports video games first added commentary. Like that was like a huge leap forward.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was like there, and then it wasn't, and then it was.
I remember like Madden 95 had like tiny little like digitized voice clips from John Madden every once in a while. You'd hear John Madden go,
up and boom, he took one right in the face.
It wasn't even that evolved. It was just like he would score and be like, touchdown.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, okay.
I think I'm thinking of like Madden 96 or 7, because I definitely had a version of it on Super Nintendo where that was a direct quote from one of those games. I don't remember.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
But that was all. Like you get that little like clip at the end of the play, and then it was it.
But like once you had like actual dynamic commentary, that was such an evolution. I think that's what we're going to get with this if it delivers. Like unless it's like every other match you hear like the same voice line over and over again. But
that's always the thing. You know, that's kind of the constant battle that, I mean, me as a sports game, person, I used to play a lot more sports games than I do now. I've gotten burned out by it. But when you play them, it's like, man, you hear the same lines over and over and over. You play enough MLB The Show, eventually I mute the commentators. I'm like, I'm done. I've heard
it becomes a podcast game eventually.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a few more things here before we move back over to the fighting side of things. Well, I guess we're going to stay on the fighting side of things, just the fighting game side of things.
In some way, yeah.
Talking about Street Fighter, and I brought up Marvel vs. Capcom earlier. I'm a huge arcade one-up guy. I got 3 of these cabinets. I've got a Street Fighter 2 cabinet with a bunch of other games. I've got a Mortal Kombat Trilogy cabinet, and I have an NBA Jam cabinet.
And I know you're thinking about that Simpsons cab.
I was, but then Arcade 1-Up last week announced a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 cabinet, which I don't know how much nostalgia you have for Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in particular. But God, yeah, it is such a great 56 playable characters from Marvel and Capcom. But it's not just Marvel vs. Capcom. And the game hasn't been available to purchase officially since 2013. That was when the Xbox and PlayStation versions got delisted. And then, like, if you want to buy a Dreamcast or a PS2 copy, it is, like, way up there in price. Like, I don't know what the latest numbers were. I remember at one point it was, like, over $100 for one of those discs on eBay. But, so it has 8 games. Well, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Marvel vs. Capcom 1, Marvel vs. Street Fighter, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes, which is just that Marvel fighting game that I want, but, with a bunch of outdated designs and heroes now at this point.
Sure.
X-Men Children of Adam, X-Men Mutant Apocalypse, and Marvel Superheroes in War of the Gems. So 8 Marvel games.
There's a few I haven't even heard of in there, yeah.
Dude, it's such a good cabinet. And I remember playing X-Men versus Street Fighter growing up and Marvel versus Street Fighter. That's what I want. I want Marvel versus Street Fighter in 2023 because... So
you want them to update that concept.
Give us the Street Fighter characters. Those are fine. But leave all the other Capcom nonsense out of there. But I don't need Monster Hunter and Mega Man to fight Thanos. Like,
I honestly, Mega Man should be fighting Thanos. I'm pretty sure he's up to the task.
Though if he defeats him, then does that mean he gets the Infinity Stones?
Correct.
Because he gets the powers of whoever he defeats.
See, now you understand it. So that Mega Man jumps up and he gets and he soaks up the Infinity Stones. That'd be great.
Speaking of Capcom, Scott, I just wanted to leave you hanging after making that whole audio demonstration.
We're good.
Capcom announced the 10 best-selling Capcom games.
I was interested in this. You mentioned this on our outline here, so I'm curious what they are.
Okay, so these are...
I'll let you list them before I react.
So we'll count them down. Okay, we'll start with 10. Yeah. We're going to do another top 10 list before we move on from gaming because we have another top 10 best-selling games.
Yeah.
All right, so number 10, the Street Fighter 2.
Okay.
I'm surprised it's that low. But number 9, Resident Evil Village. Number 8, Street Fighter 5. Number 7, Resident Evil 6. Number 6, Resident Evil 5. Number 5, Monster Hunter World Iceborne, which was the expansion.
So they are separating the two,
yes.
Right? Okay.
Number 4, Resident Evil 2. I'm assuming they mean the remake. Number 3, Monster Hunter Rise. Number 2, Resident Evil 7. And number 1, Monster Hunter World.
Wow.
18.3 million copies.
I'm actually really surprised at that because you remember when that came out and everyone was talking about it, how it was this very, it's got this control system that might be a little too, it's not like a jump in and play kind of game, right?
But it brought it to the mainstream.
They did, but also there was kind of the questions about whether it could cross over. And then obviously they did well enough that they had Iceborne as like a whole separate release in a sense, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's an upgrade, but it's also its own thing. I'm very surprised to hear that it's a bigger seller than like some of the Street Fighter games or the Resident Evil
games. Of the Street Fighter games.
Yeah, literally every single one. Exactly.
I mean, it's the greatest
it's wild.
selling Capcom. Yeah, it's Monster Hunter has always been huge in Japan. And it's had a very dedicated kind of more niche following over in the US and in the West as a whole. Monster Hunter World, I think, is the closest that game has come to being like a huge mainstream success. So you had all of the like built-in audience already, and then it expanded out. I mean, I own 2 copies of that game, and I didn't even play it all that much. I bought it on Xbox when it first came out, and then I was like, I have friends that play it on PlayStation, so I bought the PlayStation version. I never even turned it on, but like, that game was a phenomenon for a while, and it's still
I played a lot of Monster Hunter when it came out. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, Monster Hunter Stories is the one that they're supporting right now, and that was a big deal too. That's a Switch Switch and PC exclusive.
Okay.
But yeah, those games really do well for them. I was honestly surprised Monster Hunter World was the number one selling game, but it makes sense when you think about like how big of a leap forward that was for that franchise.
Sure, but also in the sense that it was only available on 2 consoles, and I guess PC probably too, right? Or maybe not.
Yeah, it's on PC.
Okay, yeah, but it wasn't available on Switch either. I mean, they had their own, separate, I guess ecology of games for Monster Hunter, because they had come out at some point with kind of I guess it was a remaster's probably it's probably more like a port of one of the ones that was on 3DS, if I understand correctly.
Yes, so
I played that a little bit too with a buddy.
It's so wild that like I don't know if I'm just trying to see like how they split out the Street Fighter 2 SKUs, because there's no way that it's outsold all of the Street Fighter 2 copies.
Well, there's no way they can possibly include arcade, money that was made.
No, never. But
that I'm sure once you just throw that in, it's like, well, it made like literally billions of dollars like then too. You just add that on.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking of like how many versions of Street Fighter 2 are out there.
What was the number one selling Street Fighter again?
Street Fighter 5 on PlayStation 4.
Interesting. Okay.
That was 6.6 million units.
And it's now, oh my goodness, that's so crazy that it ever sold more than that on a, well, when you think about it, during the 90s, when it was Street Fighter 2 was kind of all at its peak, we were playing it in the arcades, so people weren't buying it at home as much. So it makes sense. If there was no arcade and it was as much of a phenomenon, it probably would have been the best selling, or at least one of them.
That makes sense.
Would have pushed it, but yeah, I can see the logic behind that. It's fun. It's just fascinating, though. Wow.
So Scott,
that's a fascinating. Why did they put that? I mean, I guess maybe you don't know why they put it out, but it's like this was a random time to put that out.
Nope, it was the end of their fiscal year, so they were reporting.
But do they do that every year? They put out the top 10 all time for Capcom?
I don't know if they do it every year, but
that's what I mean. It's a weird timing for it.
Because we also had a top 10 from Nintendo, which is the final gaming news segment we're going to do right here.
Yeah. So I want to know about this one too.
So these are the top 10 Switch games of all time.
Switch games. Okay, so I'll let you name it again. You do your 10 to 1, and then we'll react.
Okay, 10, Ring Fit Adventure. 9, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. 8, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. 7, Super Mario Party. 6, Super Mario Odyssey. 5, Pokemon Sword and Shield. 4, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. 3, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. 2, Animal Crossing New Horizons. And 1, do you want to make a guess?
I kind of lost track of some of these in the numbers, so why don't you just name it?
Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I was going to say that I didn't think we had named that, but I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, we said that already, guy.
So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has been the number one selling game since it came out, and in the last quarter, or the last quarter alone, sold 1.5 million units.
Okay, because obviously they added new tracks, right?
Yeah, but like that's just and it sold almost 47 million copies.
That is bonkers, absolutely bonkers. Wow.
And so we said that like Monster Hunter World was the best selling Capcom game, right? 18.8 million units was how many it sold. 6 of the top 10 Switch games have sold more than that.
That's the power of Nintendo, man.
So Mario Odyssey, 24 million. Pokemon Sword and Shield, 24.5. Breath of the Wild, 27. Smash Ultimate, 29. Animal Crossing New Horizons, 40 million. And Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, 47 million.
See, honestly, it does really make a whole lot of sense. Those top 2 especially, because number 2, I know from listening to your All Things Nintendo podcast how big people were playing
Animal Crossing.
Thank you. During the pandemic, because I didn't play it. I'm not an Animal Crossing guy, right? My wife played, I think, New Leaf way back, right?
That was 3DS.
That one. Yeah. That was kind of her. I think that was her last like big game addiction, really, before we became parents, and then things changed, right?
You got to get her Animal Crossing New Horizons, man.
If she had the time, she'd play it.
Just give it. She can take it with her wherever she goes. Like if she's like taking the kids to like sports or something.
That is not the issue.
So I remember my mom would always be the one stuck taking me to like all my sports and everything, like baseball, basketball, soccer. Like she would be the one sitting out there, and it's like I wonder how much like a Switch would have changed her experience of having to sit at the pool with my brother, because my brother was a competitive swimmer, or having to sit at the baseball diamond with me for like hours on end.
My mom always brought a book. My mom was a big book reader in those situations. But really, at this point, it's more like my children constantly need something, and it's constantly one of us. So that's why there's literally no time to play any of those games.
Sure.
But to get back to it, I mean, again, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe makes absolute perfect sense. It's the one that goes across generations. It goes across, age groups. I mean, literally, this is the first game that like my kids have been able to sit down and actually play like in any meaningful way. They're not good yet, but they can beat some of the last cars in a ghost race or in a PC race sometimes. So no, it's definitely the one that gets everybody in the seat,
Oh, absolutely, and it's colorful. It's family friendly.
Exactly.
Like there's everything that you need for a certified hit. It has Mario splashed across it. It has Link in it. It has the Splatoon Inklings. It has the Animal Crossing characters. Like, and it also has all that new DLC, as you had mentioned before, where it's like all these people who'd been putting it off are like, oh, now I have this reason to pick up this game that I just hadn't been playing for a while. But I think the success of it is why we're getting all this DLC, because they're like, oh, we have like 40, at the time, probably 44 million people that own this game. Let's announce some DLC and then get an extra $25 or bolster our expansion pack. Because if you have the premium Nintendo Switch Online subscription, that is included at no additional charge. So you get the 48 new tracks, you get the Animal Crossing New Horizons DLC as well, and then also the Splatoon 2 expansion. If you happen to own Splatoon 2 but you don't have the expansion, you also get that.
Can you imagine if they get to the point where they've released on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe every track that has ever existed in Mario Kart?
That's the dream,
like
right?
That is the dream, but like they're heading in that direction in a way that we're actually posing the question. But I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like,
no.
Yeah, now you just don't write off the idea is all I'm saying.
So what I think is going to happen is they're going to get to the end of 2023, which is when they said that all these tracks will be out. So the game's shipped with 48 courses, right?
Right.
That includes DLC from the Wii U version. So like they already did some DLC on the Wii U when it was just called Mario Kart 8.
Sure.
Then they brought it over to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with all the DLC already baked in. That came out in 2017. Here we are in 2022. They announced 48 new tracks by the end of 2023. So it's coming out in 6 waves, 8 courses every wave. And we had about 5 months between wave 1 and wave 2. And I did the math, and we're going to have to pick up the pace if we're going to get all these waves out by the end of 2023.
Yeah, I know, right? I was wondering why it took so long. Because my understanding was it was supposed to be by the end of 22. So I was mistaken.
No, it's end of 2023.
Yeah.
So I think that what they're going to do is they're going to get to the end of 2023, release that. And then once they put out the trailer for the final wave of courses, they're going to say, they're going to take a brief pause, and then they're going to announce Mario Kart 9. That's my guess.
All right.
Because they're going to take all the money they can from this game, let the players enjoy this, and then they'll be like Mario Kart 9 coming 2024. That's my guess, but you never know with Nintendo. They are impossible to predict.
Or they could use all that money to buy, like, I don't know, a small nation or something.
Just get one of those
or
Conor
maybe
McGregor
a
yachts.
Size nation.
Yeah, it was a Lamborghini that was the yacht brand that Conor McGregor did.
Was that? I don't remember.
I think he bought a Lamborghini yacht.
I try not to pay attention to Conor. As a rule, when he's doing other stuff in his life, I just don't care.
Hey, he's in the Roadhouse remake.
Yes, he sure is, isn't he? You're correct.
So let's jump over to fighting. We had an action-packed fight night. So I wasn't super high on this fight night. I wasn't even super high. Yeah, I was not super high on the main event, which was Jamal Hill and Thiago Santos. Jamal Hill obviously coming out on top in that matchup, but that was a very fun 4-round, or I guess 3.5 round fight.
Man, I told you it would deliver. Man, it was definitely I probably oversold it with I think I rated it a 4, and you gave it what, like a 2.5 or something.
I don't even remember. It was either 2.5 or a 3. I was leaning towards.
No, you were definitely under 3. I know you were in the 2 range. So it was
probably a 2.5.
Yeah, because that's why I knew we were distinctly apart on this one. I feel like it was closer to what I thought than what you thought.
Absolutely was.
It probably still overrated a little bit. But either way, I think ultimately we were happy with it.
I mean, it was the second UFC card ever, right? With no decisions.
That is correct. Yeah. Well, I think Ever is at least dating back to like,
the modern era,
Zuffa era,
yeah,
in particular. I think is what we're really talking about. You could probably go a little farther back, but yeah, like once you get back into the original UFCs, the '90s UFCs, they were all like finished for a little while.
It was basically fight until somebody said I'm done.
Yeah, it literally was. Yeah.
Since they introduced the modern rule set, or this is the second time in UFC history where we have not seen the judges' scorecards.
Obviously, a very, very wild thing, and I kept seeing people on social media talking about, hey, we're already eight finishes, 8 fights, and I'm like, stop talking about it.
Don't jinx it.
The whole no-hitter thing.
Yeah. I remember when ESPN used to try to like dance around it in their social media, and they'd be like, the Brewers Orioles game sure is looking interesting, and they'd put like the eyes like the sideways eyes emoji, sure. And then it would just show like the scoreboard. Like they didn't say like there's a no hitter happening over here. It would just be like they'd show like the scoreboard 0-0-0.
Yeah, that's good social media.
That's doing their best. But so Jamal Hill and Thiago Santos came out there and had themselves a little bit of a barroom brawl, a little bit of grappling thrown in, but mostly they were throwing at each other.
It was more Santos like kind of winging his like heavy shots because he wore down. He tired really quickly in that fight, right?
He did,
and I think he was just kind of running on fumes to some degree. But he's such a gamer, and he's just so mentally tough that he's able to at least try to make it happen. And he ended up winning the third round on 2 of the scorecards too. I would disagree with that, but that's another conversation. It's just the fact that he was in this fight long after it looked like he'd actually had the energy for it was really impressive. And he's still, even in the 4th round, he's still throwing these like wild haymakers that, if they connect, it really is lights out. But Jamal Hill, he's just too technically sharp is really what it comes down to. And he was able to avoid everything. And you kind of said that barroom brawl thing. I think one of them ended up fighting more like it was a barroom brawl, but the other one had enough to come back and be like, I'm an actual martial artist. I'm going to beat you. And sure enough, he did.
Yeah, Jamal Hill is so good. I remember, I forget what fight it was of his where I was like, this guy is a potential contender here. Like he is, I think it was the Jimmy Crute fight where I was like, or maybe it was the OSP. It was either the OSP or the Jimmy Crute fight where I was just like, damn, this is like the real deal. And then, of course, he went out and it was his fight against Johnny Walker where Johnny Walker had the really weird knockout.
Yeah, he felt a little funny, didn't he?
If it was like a video game, I'd be like, that's a glitched animation.
Yeah.
But
there was something, his brain definitely glitched, that's for sure.
It definitely did. But yeah, so, it was one of those fights. It was either OSP or Jimmy Crute when he won that, where I was like, okay, this guy's like legit. Because this is a Contender Series guy.
Yeah.
And
he actually got on my radar because I don't watch Contender Series typically unless someone tells me I'm supposed to, or there's a fighter down there that I'm particularly interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But he was on my radar like pretty much from his actual UFC debut at the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic. I watched his fight against Darko Stosic, and he hurt Stosic a few times in there. He was able to. They made it the distance, but that's the last time that we've seen Jamal Hill actually not finish a guy. Or be finished as he did. Obviously, Paul Craig got him with an arm bar,
ripping his arm off.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I remember how funny that was because Jamal Hill just sat up and put out his bottom lip like, "Aw."
Yeah, it was a little sad.
It was just funny. Like any other normal human being would just be like, "Oh my god, my arm's out of its socket," or "My arm broke." Right. He was like,
Yeah. But no, he's been on my radar for a few years now, and I'm. It makes me feel like, hey, I've actually identified a really good talent early on. Like I saw something in there kind of special because I don't always see that with guys. And often I look through when I see hype, I often kind of go the other way.
Yeah.
So yeah, like when Aaron Pico, everyone was hyping him up. I was like, guy hasn't done anything. I'll talk to me in a few years. Yeah.
The thing about Jamal Hill is early on, he looked like he still needed to like kind of grow into his body. Sure. He looked lankier than he does now, and he just didn't seem like he had full control over like his physical gifts. I think but now
he was still a prospect. He at the point he debuted in the UFC, he was 5-0 or 6-0 or something like that. He was very young in the sport.
Yeah, but now he seems like he's putting it all together, and it's really looking like he could be something special in this division.
I think so. I do. I think he's still got to shore up some things, of course. And, I think it's good that there's actually a little bit of a backlog between him and the championship, because I don't think this would be the best time for him to jump into a title fight. But I think he's right there. And I think he's so good. And even if he gets up to the point where he gets a title fight maybe too soon or something like that, loses, I think he learns from it. It seems like he came back with a different mentality to fighting after he lost to Paul Craig, and he's been just fantastic ever since then. There's this idea when you lose to somebody and you're in the rankings, right? You probably ought to be behind them, but at this point, he's won 3 in a row. He has the best win of his career now over Thiago Santos, who at least some people believe actually beat John Jones. I pretty strongly disagree on that, but
he came close, if nothing else.
Look, he came close. I mean, you can't deny that he got one of the scorecards, but I think that scorecard's not the strongest. But nonetheless, I think his ceiling is championship. I think he can get there. I think he can be a name in the sport.
Do you think this puts him in the top 5? Right now, the top 5 under Yuri is Glover, Jan, Ankalaev, Rakic, and Anthony Smith. Do you think this puts him over Anthony Smith, this win?
I mean, obviously, we're talking about UFC ranking. Sure, yeah, yes. I think he's there. The only reason I make sure that distinction is because I do think there are some real talented guys over in Bellator at 205 pounds.
Yeah, so actually, UFC rankings
does skew the 205 pound rankings. Other divisions, I think you can oftentimes go to the top 10 of the UFC is more or less what it is. But 205 in particular is one where I'd almost say it's kind of a close split, 50-50-ish.
50-50, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the maybe 2 or 3 best are actually in the UFC, but after that, it actually gets really interesting. I mean, there's guys like, you can't discount Vadim Nemkov or Ryan Bader, all these guys that are realistically, I think, still in that conversation. Corey Anderson has been looking fantastic. There's no reason to think that Corey Anderson couldn't actually win the UFC championship if he was still there.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Yuri at the top there. I think he could stand with Yuri and then also take him down, get him to the ground and wear him out. But Yuri's a problem. Let's be real.
He's absolutely, he's a very interesting fighter nonetheless.
What was it?
That's what's really great about these guys now.
Was it John Anik?
They're fun to watch. Yeah, what about John Anik?
Was he the one who's a terrifying force has entered the light heavyweight division when Yuri knocked out Dominic Reyes?
I don't remember that particular line, but you're probably right.
I mean, I remember being because he knocked out Volkan Oezdemir and was all right, well, that was a really big knockout. And
sure.
Oezdemir has been not looking super great in his past several fights. When he knocked out Dominic Reyes in the way that he did, I was just good God. That was one of the ones the Francis Ngannou knockout of Overeem, where it was just or Yair Rodriguez knocking out Korean Zombie with his upward elbow at the last second of the fight, literal last second of the fight, where the guy falls to the ground. You're just oh, you're just that guy might have died just in front of my eyes.
The funny thing about Yuri is I remember when the UFC actually did sign him. It was right before Jamal Hill had his first UFC fight. It was in January 2020. It was before everything kind of shut down and the world kind of changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he signed, and it didn't get a ton of notice, but even in the mixed martial arts circles, MMA Junkie, MMA Fan, I think people knew this was a bigger signing. And I was working on, I guess it was a proto version of my first podcast, right? And one of the things we had in there was a news, bits here and there thing. And I was trying to throw that in. And everyone around me was I don't care. I don't know who that is. It was okay. He's something. And obviously now we definitely know who Yuri Prochazka is.
Oh, yeah. There's no denying that dude is. I mean, he's almost like the Justin Gaethje of the light heavyweight division. It's you watch a Yuri Prochazka fight, you're going to get action.
Yeah, absolutely. But action, of course, is what we got on Saturday, like you mentioned, all finishes. I mean,
good segue.
It was, yeah, exactly, right. Thank you. No, what I really loved about this one too is not only did we get those early finishes in the first, opening prelims. So a lot of them maybe the matchmaking wasn't as great on some of them. Terrence McKinney against Eric Gonzalez felt like a very bad matchup even from the start, and it certainly played out that way for as long as it lasted, a couple minutes.
McKinney's so good.
McKinney's so good, and I think Eric Gonzalez is now 0-2 in the UFC. He is. I don't think that's representative necessarily of who he is. I hope
Drew Dober was his first fight.
No, I think it was. I believe it was Jim Miller.
Oh God, that's right. Yeah, McKinney was the one that fought Drew Dober.
Yes, that's right. They had that round of the year earlier this year. Now, in Jim Miller, you've got literally the UFC Iron Man.
Yeah.
And then in Terrence McKinney, you've got one of the, I think, brighter prospects, 155 pounds in the whole sport. That's my 2 cents anyway.
He's super good.
And these are terrible matchups for this guy. Like, what do we know? For all we know, Eric Gonzalez will be able to hang someday. He just can't hang with this level of talent just yet. So that's unfortunate. But to get back to my point that I was going to try and make is the fact that not only did we have those first round finishes, we ended up having 2 fights end in the 3rd round, including Juliana Miller, who finished it with just a little over a minute to go. She was like, she was going to win that fight. She didn't need it. She had to know she was up. And she still was like, I want that finish. I really want that finish. And sure, she went out and she
looked good.
I mean, it was she did look good. I didn't watch the show. I don't watch The Ultimate Fighter anymore. But yeah, I mean, we had 2 third-round finishes later actually both of them ended up being, in kind of that middle to late part of the round too. So these went about as long as they could before, and then a 4th-round finish in the main event. So if there was one fight that needed the extra 2 rounds to get that finish, it was the one that was the main event and had that opportunity. So that was
it's funny because I believe I said this last episode where I was like, I almost wish that we were getting 5 rounds of Jeff Neal and Vicente Luque instead of Jamal Hill and Thiago Santos. And then there you go. Jeff Neal and Vicente Luque ended in round 3, which, by the way, speaking of guys putting it all together, you had Jamal Hill in the main event. Jeff Neal put it all together against Vicente Luque.
He did, except for that round in the middle that he said he likes to take off the middle round, which he should do, and he knows that. He knows that too.
Damn, like that onslaught of uppercuts that he hit Vicente Luque with in the finishing sequence, like good God.
It was real nasty stuff, and I think it's unfortunate in the sense that I think we're starting to see the possibly even rapid decline of Vicente Luque,
which sucks
at this stage of his career, because I thought he really was good enough to challenge for the belt. He'll be one of those guys that got so close but never was there. Had a really good run and didn't get there, but no, he's been a fun action fighter for years. But this was a really impressive performance from Jeff Neal. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know who else? I don't know anything else about him aside from the fact that you told me last episode he's Kamaru Usman's brother.
That he is.
Muhammad Usman, good God, muscles on muscles, first of all.
Yeah, then, he's pretty diesel.
And then second of all, like, he put Zach Pauga?
They kept saying Pounga on the broadcast, but I think it's Pauga. I don't know.
Zach Pauga, who also, he didn't look bad at all. But like
he looked, I mean, he won the first round as far as I'm concerned.
But Muhammad Usman just put him to sleep.
Yeah, it was just that perfect left that just perfectly timed, perfect time, and I think he caught Pounga, kind of coming in there, and it was just like boom, and then he was down. It was done. And then, the fact that he hits that, obviously he shows that he's got the power, but also I wonder about him just because I think he's got a lot more growth to do, because I don't think he was throwing with enough output. If he's going to do that other times, he might end up just getting out volumed on decisions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but also the division he's in might not necessarily might not necessitate too much output.
You think that, but then you look at these heavyweight fights where we're like, there's no way this goes past 5 minutes, and then 15 minutes later you're like, well, I wish it had only gone 5 minutes. And we get too many of those in the UFC, especially in kind of that like lower to middle range of talent. There's a few guys who tend to transcend that, but more or less, I usually, my rule is I want 5 minute heavyweight fights. If they haven't settled it in 5 minutes, just move on.
What do you think would be, and this is putting on the matchmaker cap, who do you think would be a good first actual UFC fight for Muhammad Usman?
For Muhammad Usman, ooh, that's a good question.
Obviously, someone not anywhere sniffing the rankings.
Yeah, it'd have to be really. How about John Jones?
Hey man, if it gets John Jones back in the octagon, like, I mean, him and the other guy we mentioned earlier, as far as I'm concerned, retired. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair to say. You know what? How about Hamdi Abdul Wahab, the guy who won last week at the pay-per-view? He beat Dontel Mays. Okay.
He was on the prelims. Maybe you missed that because I don't know how much you were able to have watched that pay-per-view.
I didn't see that fight.
You know what? Because Hamdi, he comes in. He was an Olympic wrestler.
Oh yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I think that one makes a lot of sense because they're both really kind of prospects, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see that one as actually like a really appropriate matchup for Muhammad Usman.
How are Usman's wrestling chops? I know his brother can wrestle his ass off, but how are Muhammad Usman's wrestling chops? Because I don't see the UFC wanting to throw a guy like this. If stand-up is his forte, a guy with a name like Usman, even if it's not the Usman that we all know and love, do they want to throw him to an Olympic wrestler?
Yeah, I don't think they'd care, to be honest. I actually don't really think they would give much thought to him or that because they don't really care about the Ultimate Fighter winners anymore. It's really just a content farm, and then they get one guy out of it or one woman out of it, and then they move on. And I think, what was it? Somebody was putting down, I want to say it was, oh goodness, I'm having trouble remembering off the top of my head, but so there was somebody who I interacted with on Twitter, someone from Bloody Elbow, who was pointing out that, like, I bet you, or he bets that in the last like 10 Ultimate Fighter winners that like they probably have less than 10 main card fights between them since winning Ultimate Fighter. And like, really, that makes sense. Who were the last bunch of Ultimate Fighter winners? Like, and
I'm bringing up the list right now.
You got to take out champions and things too, because that's obviously a very different thing. When we're just talking about, non-themed seasons. So you're going back to, I think it would be tough 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. And if there was any title fights in there, they don't count.
Yeah, I'm looking at
who do you got?
Let's see. It's tricky. This is not the best laid out thing. All right, here we go. So Juliana Miller and Muhammad Usman with this.
They don't count. Yeah,
we just had Brian Battle on this card, which, by the way, I want to give him a shout out because that was a vicious KO over Takashi Sato.
Yeah. Also on the prelims though.
Yeah. Ricky Tercios was also that season. Macy Chiasson and Juan Espino. Michael Trezano and Brad Katona. Brad Katona, unfortunately, no longer in the UFC, which is weird because he seemed like he was doing pretty all right. Nico Montano, former champion.
Right. That is an unfortunate situation.
Oh man, here's a name.
You know what's unfortunate too? When you actually think about it, you know what Nico Montano's last fight was in the UFC?
Juliana Pena.
It was a decision loss to Juliana Pena, who is now the champion. So, what does that say about her? It doesn't really say.
Nico Montano was good.
We actually don't know how good Nico Montano was. We just know she wasn't really champion level, and the belt is, let's face it, she was more of a paper champion. But she was. I still think there was a talent in there that unfortunately never got to really be shown. So I think she's an unfortunate case.
I honestly think that she could have gone to the bantamweight division and been a player. Like she was started off in flyweight, like
she was obviously not the right size for that.
No,
she just couldn't make the cuts. But.
I watched that season of Ultimate Fighter. I watched there's a three season stretch here that I 4 season stretch here that I watched, and I actually thought that Nico Montano was going to be something really good.
Okay,
I didn't think she was going to beat Valentina, but I thought she would be able to be a player,
right?
She was going to be a contender. She'd maybe be in if she stayed in flyweight and was able to make that weight, maybe she'd be in the space where her tough season mate Lauren Murphy would be right now, where it's she's kind of always lingering around.
I imagine an alternate version where she's somewhere in that top 5-ish range at bantamweight, she's kind of in the same range as, let's say, like a Ketlin Vieira or an Irene Aldana kind of level. I don't know where she sits, but you can't tell. No one can tell me that she doesn't belong there because we don't know that. People are just very mad because she missed weight all these times and had weight. And look, I think there's that documentary out there that shows just how terrible her weight cuts were and that kind of thing. And I mean, are we really going to be mad at this woman for that?
It sucks.
Who paid for it more than anyone else? It was her.
Yeah, it sucks as a what could have been,
Yeah, exactly. She's she married a what if case in
the next one before that was Jesse Taylor, who I don't know if you watched that season of Tough.
No.
That dude would just wrestle people to the ground and hold them down and just beat the hell out of them. And he was super promising. He beat Diego Lima in the finals, and he seemed like he had so much promise. He blew his first chance way back in.
Yeah, I remember that.
Where he went on a rampage in Vegas, and Dana White was like, "You're going home," basically. This was his redemption shot. He won it, and then he tested positive for performance enhancing drugs, and basically the UFC is like, "Nope, you blew it again. Goodbye." But now we're getting...
I mean, and it's unfortunate because he was bringing performance enhancing drugs into a very clean sport. That's just the real
such
shit.
A clean sport. So wait, I will say we get on a stretch here where we get some names. All right, so
I know, but we're going farther back though.
Tim Elliott, Tatiana Suarez, which another
Tim Elliott was also a title fight season. That was during the title shot.
Yeah, that was when he got the title shot against DJ right off the bat from there. But Tatiana Suarez, talk about what ifs.
Yeah. She's an unfortunate. I hope she can get back.
Ryan Hall.
I still don't think I wouldn't even write her off as beating Valentina one day. Like, that's the crazy thing.
She is so good. And
I don't know what she is now, but like, she had the talent that she could actually be a threat.
I think honestly, I think she goes up to 135. Like, she is.
No, she was at 115 before. I think she's going to be 125.
Oh yeah, 125. Sorry. For some reason, I think when you said Valentina, I was like, oh yeah, she was a 125. But no, you're right. She was a 115er.
Yeah.
But yeah,
she just dominated the heck out of Carla Esparza in one fight. Actually, it was obviously the champion now.
I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, Tatiana Suarez, absolutely a what if.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't need to go back any further. But yeah,
the point being, I mean, a lot of those names, man. I mean, other than the champions that we're talking about, or the title contender, the ones who won kind of those different type of seasons, right? They're very different than identifying new talent,
I actually forgot that Juliana Pena was a tough champion.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, her and Chris Holdsworth. That was the other winner that season, which talk about diverging careers.
That's another one who, I mean, he got hurt. I believe he actually got injured in the gym is the
by
story.
TJ Dillashaw.
That's the story is that TJ Dillashaw more or less ended his career.
Yeah, kneed him in the head, I think.
Yeah, something like that. It's a really unfortunate case, but he's been what is it? They don't call them Team Alpha Male now. They said Team Alpha MMA.
I thought it was just Team Alpha.
Is it just Team Alpha? Okay, maybe, yeah. But they obviously they changed the name because they have more women coming in there nowadays. I mean, they were still like Paige Van Zandt was fighting Team Alpha Male. But anyway, we don't need to go. Yeah. Let's kind of take it back here. I think we've probably said our piece about the past weekend, which was obviously fantastic.
It was a very good fight.
What more can you say about it? We had a great time. It was a great card, and no one really thought it was going to be, but it ended up being fantastic. So, and it's an easy one to go back and watch if you missed. You can watch pretty much everything in a pretty much concise amount of time.
One thing before we move on to the main cards here, because we do want to talk briefly about PFL 8 playoffs, UFC Fight Night Vera versus Cruz, and Bellator 284 Gracie versus Yamauchi. However, I do want to bring. We mentioned we do not typically watch Dana White's Contender Series.
I typically don't. You're right.
This one, however, I might tune into the main event because Bo Nickel.
I'm curious. I gotta at least see what this hype is about. Everyone's talking about Bo Nickel.
One of the greatest amateur wrestlers in the United States history is making his case for why he should be in the UFC. And I'm not a big amateur wrestling guy, but I hear these names like Bo Nickel, and I'm like, you're Daniel Cormier, just being like, that's the guy right there. That's the guy. And
that's the one that I kind of think of when we talk about Bo Nickel is as a prospect, a former wrestler. That's when I actually paid attention to the hype. When it was Daniel Cormier and the hype was about him, I thought that was interesting way back when, 2009, I want to say. And I am interested in this too, in Bo Nickel. Sport's different place now, though. It's a very different place. They're going to throw him into the UFC if they sign him, or maybe they'll sign him to a development deal if he wins. That kind of thing. Where sometimes they'll let you take your other fights outside of the UFC.
But when you're ready, they basically call you up from the minors.
Exactly. Yeah. It's and honestly, for a guy like him, I mean, you almost think he might be able to get more money, unfortunately, out there. But it is what it is. But he's definitely an interesting guy. I forget who it is he's fighting because I don't really. I guess I don't pay attention to Contender Series.
Zachary Borrego.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
I don't know either, but he is ranked number 58 in the middleweight division as far as the U.S. Southeast is concerned on Tapology.
Well, on Tapology, yeah. I mean, that just means he's somewhere in there. I mean, I get it. They're just trying to find a guy that's like, okay, he's a body that might work out. I will watch Bo Nickel is what I'm saying. And I'm always very excited when I do watch Contender Series. And the reason I don't watch is just because I try to limit the number of fights I watch a week because I don't have the time to make my whole week about it. So Contender Series, it just doesn't rate as far as something that usually the New York Post is trying to cover.
Of course.
So I can avoid that one more or less. But when I do watch it, I'm always very happy to see or hear Laura Sanko, who is, I think, a really just fantastic commentator, color commentator. She really does deserve to get that shot on
Absolutely.
a UFC proper card. I think she's paid dues in so much as anyone ever really needs to pay dues in this type of game in the UFC. She knows her stuff. Give her a shot.
She's incredible, and she absolutely deserves that spot. Like, I would love to hear even if it's just a fight night card with John Anik and Laura Sanko as the duo.
I mean, that would be terrific. But shoot, I mean, her and Fitzgerald and like Michael Bisping or something. I think that would, or I think Paul Felder has often worked with her. So I feel like that trio would be perfectly fine. Why can't they do a UFC proper card? I think that would be just fantastic. So
yeah, for sure.
We'll see if that does come to fruition. I hope it does.
So we've got three major promotion this weekend. One of which is the UFC fight card. But let's talk about the Bellator and the PFL first.
Start with Bellator, I guess, if you want to go that way, because they're on Friday night.
Yes.
In South Dakota.
They're taking
a show in South Dakota.
I should just drive down there.
You could.
I mean, I was just in Sioux Falls a few weekends ago.
I think that might be where it is. I would have to double check.
It says on Tapology, Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say South Dakota. I don't know anywhere else in South Dakota, so if it jumped out at me, then is Fargo South Dakota or North Dakota?
I think Fargo is North Dakota.
Oh, okay.
So I could be wrong. I don't really pay too much attention to the Dakotas, I'll be honest.
Well, I do pay attention to Fargo because I've watched all 4 seasons and the movie.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't realize I was among royalty here. It's a 4-hour drive for me if I really wanted to do that. But I don't know. I mean, if it was a UFC fight card, I might.
And look, I'll be honest.
Or this is an amazing card.
I'll be honest. I'm just not interested in this card on the whole. Like, I mean, Gracie and Yamuchi, I believe, actually has the potential to be one of the more entertaining Bellator main events that they've had all year.
I mean, that's not saying
a lot
much.
Of those have not delivered. And I think this one really could because they're the matchup I like. I think both of them kind of come to fight. And so I would say that this is, obviously you don't have Showtime, but if you do have Showtime, dear listener, this is a fight you should definitely try to watch. I can't tell you should sit down and watch the whole card. I'm not that interested in Austin Vanderford or, Lima Lay McFarland says she's pretty much going to fight out her contract and this is it. It might even be the last fight if I recall.
Where do you think she goes from here?
I thought was kind of going places at heavyweight, but he lost the belt and I don't really know what he necessarily is. It was not a good performance, his last outing either. So yeah, I mean, it's not like this card has absolutely nothing, but man, I'm just not particularly interested in it. I can't lie about that.
Where do you think Alima Lay McFarland goes from here? Do you think she maybe takes some meetings with the UFC after this?
No, I think what she's saying is she wants to retire.
Really?
She's kind of okay. Yeah, and honestly, she did not impress me in her last fight either against Justine Kish.
Sure.
Who's obviously a UFC level talent. And it's not that I don't think Alima Lay McFarland could actually, stick in the UFC, but what is she there to do? I don't think she'd win the belt. I don't think
she wouldn't take down Valentina, but
no, she would. Oh my goodness, Valentina would just massacre her. She has some, just like she has other women. I don't. Think
I mean, that's not a unique thing.
Way. That's not writing Alima Lay McFarland off so much as it's enhancing what I believe of Valentina Shevchenko. But I don't think we're going to see much more of her in the sport. Pretty much, I don't know.
That's unfortunate.
She can do other things. I mean, she could probably be a commentator on Bellator's side, work the desk, that kind of thing. They like her. They obviously do like her. She seems very likable. I've never met her, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just not that particularly interested in this card on the whole. And even the prelims, the the Bellator prelims had been getting much more interesting, but now I'm looking down deeper on this, and we've got, Patrick Downey is making his debut against Jeff Souter, who is making his debut.
Yep.
I mean, we've got 2 fights between debuting fighters. This is what we were kind of getting away from in Bellator, and now we're moving back to. I guess I don't know. I don't. Optically, it's just man, why don't you just try to present cards that put your best foot forward as a promotion?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the best card. You do have Austin Vanderford, you have Alima Lay McFarland, you have Valentin Moldovsky, all of whom have either held a belt or challenged for a belt. So I mean that's something, but like, what name value do any of them really bring outside of like the people who follow Bellator week to week, or I guess month to month at this point?
Month to month at this point, yeah. Which I am still a big proponent of the month to month thing. I actually really like it.
But if you're going to do that, why not have a stronger card than this?
You know, it's a good question.
Like
but
the UFC,
I will say one of their bigger stars is fighting in bare knuckle in August as
MVP.
well. In MVP, and we don't get him in a belt card. Now, granted, that's fighter friendly. I'm not against promotions being fighter friendly, but this is the trade off.
Here's I just like, imagine if like, I mean, this is unfair to do this, but imagine if the UFC did one card a month, how stacked those cards would be.
I remember what those were like, and they were fantastic.
Yeah.
I kind of want them to go back.
I'm just saying, like, I wish, like, if I think we're a couple of fights being injected into this card from it being worthy of being the one card a month that Bellator does.
Sure.
But this is not it. Like, this is like, when they said, like, hey, we're going to take a step back from, like, trying to do it, like, every couple of weeks at least, we're just going to try to do it every month. I expected, like, all right, we're going to start getting a lot better cards. And this is on the weaker end of that spectrum.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you know, to be clear, as far as my understanding is, Bellator has not officially adopted, we're doing a card a month, but like, I mean, we can see our calendars, and we do see one a month. That's what it's been going on. That's what we're leading up to. You know, they're back again. They're taking off until September 23rd for Bellator 285, and then they're not back on again until October. So yeah, it is one a month, which again I like, but yeah, you'd like to see maybe more stacked than this. Bellator, the reason why they have a lot of these, you know, I guess, you know, debuting fighter or low, you know, new coming fighters kind of thing. I think they like to do that when they come to territories like South Dakota or whatever, and they'll work with like local promotions to get their fights on to fill out their cards. But I feel like Bellator, if they want to kind of keep the optics up, they really ought to move away from that kind of thing, which is not new for them, but it's probably time to put that up in the past, as they sort of had been. And that's why it's disappointing to see this now. So.
It really is. And
yeah, I mean, realistically, there's only 7 fights on here. I guess 8 fights on here that are even between anyone with at least 3 fights on their card.
Yeah, it's not a great card. And I will also say it's
probably don't go to South Dakota.
Yeah, I probably will not be doing this drive, this 4-hour each way drive. But I will also probably not even be watching the PFL card that is happening this week. Like, it's McDonald and Umalatov. I'm always happy to see Rory McDonald fight. Like, I think that if he stuck around, he'd probably still be relatively respected in the UFC. It's just like, I don't know. There's nothing. There's one fighter with a Wikipedia page on this card, and it's Rory McDonald. And everybody else, if you haven't been following the PFL, you have no idea who these people are.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just set the stage for people really quick. And by the way, this is taking place on a Saturday afternoon because they're in Wales. So it's kind of a different showtime for you, which is also an annoying part of PFL is they're never on the same day. You can't keep track. That hurts them, I think, a lot. But yeah, they've got welterweights, like you said, Rory McDonald, Magomed Mulatov. Anyone named Magomed, you got to take seriously, by the way. Sadabusi and Carlos Leal. I think that one's a really good one because Leal actually beat Ray Cooper III.
I do remember
that
fight.
Was the one where he upset him, and he really wasn't even supposed to be in the season. And so now he's got a chance to win. That's why he's actually an interesting story. I think there's actually something really cool about him in particular. But the heavyweights too, they lost Bruno Capolozza, who won the title in 2021. He's injured. He's out. He would have been in the playoffs. So that's a big blow.
Right after he found out like his uncle had died or something.
His father.
His dad. Jesus.
Yeah. They didn't tell him until after he
won. Yeah. Imagine going from bliss to that.
I still don't know how I would feel. You know, I kind of get the reason why they did it, and I think ultimately I would probably be able to come to peace with it.
I think I would be thankful, honestly, because I would have been like, "There's no way."
It's a very strange situation, though. I'm just glad I don't ever have to know how I would feel in that way. Yeah. Not that obviously a loss of a loved one will happen, but we're not going to go there.
This took a turn.
It did. Let's move back. Let's move back to fights. And
abort.
Ante Dalia and Renan Ferreira, and then Dennis Goltsov against Mateus Scheffel. Those are the 4 heavyweights that are up for this. So the 2 heavyweight fights. I guess I'm not that interested in the heavyweight division. I think this is the weaker of the three PFL playoff brackets, I guess they have, or three playoff weekends that they have, because they'll be on again next weekend. I was just at the one in New York, of course, the other day, which was a good time. I had a nice time there. I got to meet the Bane, Ben Davis.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's a nice kid. We had a good time covering the fights there. And even though the seats were a little weird, it was not the typical setup when you go to a Bellator or PFL card for media. They put you a little farther back with a lot of structures and a crane camera in the way. So it's kind of one of those things where even as media, you're like, I guess I'm just going to watch the board here. And then at some point I had to go in and do interviews. So I'm like, I think I actually have as good a view back here as I do in my other seat. So I'm just going to stay. So, which is fine. It is what it is. I don't want to act too privileged, but I can do my job is what it comes down to. I feel bad about the photographers who weren't allowed to get as close as they really ought to have been able to take good shots.
Sure.
That stinks.
Yeah, that's stinks. Difficult.
But we got to wrap this up here, sir.
We've got one more fight card we want to talk about briefly here. I mean, the main UFC, event,
of course, yeah.
Main event, Marlon Vera versus Dominic Cruz. That's an incredible fight, I think.
That's a fun main event. I really like that one a lot. I think this will definitely be the answer to whether Dominic Cruz has one more title run in him or not.
Or if Marlon Vera is an actual player in this division, right?
He's looking amazing. Is. I think that's the thing. I mean, I think actually he really has arrived. I think it would say more about Dominic Cruz if he was to win than, maybe detracting from Marlon Vera. I think he's there. Which is funny because obviously Dominic Cruz is the more accomplished of the two. But someone else had pointed out that I saw on Twitter, Marlon Vera has way more fights in the UFC than Dominic Cruz does.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're injured for years on end.
You're injured forever and ever and ever. He's actually been a lot more active in the last few
years. Which is funny because for the longest time we said, all right, well, Dominic Cruz is the greatest bantamweight in UFC, WEC history.
Yeah.
But we still look at him as almost one of those what ifs that we were talking about before. Because
he's a what if who actually still achieved something.
He's a what if that also already happened. It's wild, but how dominant could he have been if he didn't have all those injuries? If he didn't have the plantar fasciitis against Cody Garbrandt, how would that fight have looked?
I would argue he already was dominant because he's the dominator.
That's true. So Marlon Vera versus Dominic Cruz, I think, is an incredible fight. But let's do our
for me, sir.
I'll do 4. I'm going to go 4.
Yeah, I think I could go 4. I think the 4 is fair, and maybe it doesn't say as much about me because last week I probably overrated it, but I think it still worked out. So
it did.
Yeah, it did. So yeah, I'll go 4 with you too. There's obviously some decent fights on here. I don't think this is the most attractive undercard out there, but there's some interesting ones on here. Me personally, I definitely like the flyweights that are actually deep on the undercard here, which is Ode Osborne and Tyson Nam. I think that's going to be a really fun
good fight.
I like that one a lot. I think probably this I think you would agree with me very strongly. David Onama against Nathan Landwehr. That has fireworks written on it.
Gerald Meerschaert, I'm always there for a Gerald Meerschaert GM3 fight. Midwest represent.
I know.
And then also, it looks like we have a catchweight bout. Angela Hill versus Lupi Godinez.
Yes, that one. What I really like about that one is the fact that these are two women that will always take these fights on short notice, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what they're known for. And now they're fighting each other. And I'm almost positive, and maybe this is memory playing tricks on me, I'm almost positive when this was first reported that they were saying it would take place in October. And then what happens? We're seeing it in August. So not only do they often fight each other, people on short notice, they're actually fighting each other, having been much shorter notice than was originally reported. Now, maybe that was just a misnomer, but it's a funny thing for me anyway.
And also, Yusuf Zalal, this is make or break for him, I think. He's on a 3-fight losing streak after coming out of the gates screaming. He beat Austin Lingo, Jordan Griffin, and Peter Barrett, looking really great, looking like an awesome prospect. And then he lost 3 in a row to Ilya Topuria, which, fair enough.
No shame.
Sungwoo Choi, which again, very solid loss tough there. One. And then Sean Woodson. And that was a split decision.
At some point, he's got to start winning. That's the real.
But I think this is make or break for him, honestly. After showing he had all the promise in the world, now here he is, 25 years old on a 3-fight losing streak in the UFC. If he goes on a 4-fight losing streak, it might be time that the UFC says, hey, go win a few outside of this division, like they did with Brandon Moreno. Go win a few outside of the UFC, and maybe we'll bring you back.
I'm also interested. Another women's fight that I like is because I'm curious about this woman as a prospect. I'm going to butcher her name, but Yasmin Yargui.
I've not been following her.
She is 8-0. She's fighting. I believe she's also making her debut in the UFC. But I kind of like to see these interesting prospects come in, fighting each other in the UFC, because I think we usually get somebody fascinating out of it. Especially when I like it better when it's on these main cards, because you know that they actually believe in the talent. I think.
Yeah, you've got Yasmin versus Yasmin.
Yes, I guess it is a Yasmin name, but she's
spelled
Brazilian,
differently.
So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, we got Yasmin
Yazmin versus Iasmin.
Yaragui, and then Yasmin Lucindo.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'm going to give
on the whole, the rest of the card.
We were aligned in the timing there.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 2.5.
I'm actually going to go to a 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just on the whole, as much as I think I'm still going to have fun watching these fights. It's just realistically, this is very subpar compared to the way they've put together cards lately.
Maybe.
And I think I was on like a 2.5-ish last week for the card. And granted, obviously it delivered, but I still stand by the fact that these fights are just not higher level fights. We're getting a lot of, lackluster in terms of the quality of the contenderships, that kind of thing.
I will say that Ariane Lipski
one of the bigger ones is Hill and Godinez, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And Ariane Lipski versus Priscilla Cachoeira getting delayed from last week and moved to this card also helps a little bit. But yeah, I mean,
especially since they're moving up 10 pounds.
I was back and forth between a 2 and a 2.5. I'm going to stick with my 2.5, but yeah, 2 is definitely something that I was considering as well.
Yeah. But you know what? That was a big packed show. I don't think we thought we were going to talk about this much stuff.
Oh no, not at all. We thought this was going to be one of the shorter shows, and here we went an hour and a half.
We had a lot of fun. I enjoyed this. And if you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you have found us. And while you're at it, would you kindly subscribe to our social handles at Brian Pichet and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And if you want to reach us with questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear about, or just letting us know what you're hyped about in a more formal manner, you can hit us up at Ground and Pwned Pod at gmail.com. There we go. Or at Ground and Pwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games. We will talk to you next week.